internship program with ʻike, which is a bridge program between UHMC and Maui College. A part of that program, I am an intern here at at the library under Siobhan Matsuda. So we scheduled a whole bunch of events on campus to celebrate and inform students of Mahina ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi, which is Hawaiian Language Month. So one of the events is this panel discussion. Here we have Kuulei Raneta. She is a student at UHMC and she's also a graduate of Kahele under their Kaiapuni program. And we have Kahele Dukelow. She is the chairperson of the humanities section on our campus, and she is a teacher, a kumu in Hawaiian language and Hawaiian studies. And we were supposed to have Kīʻope Raymond, but unfortunately he got sick, so we have Chelsea, who is one of our librarians here, who will be reading off his answers to our discussion questions. I have a sign-in sheet going around, so if everybody can please sign in with your username, that will greatly help me towards my internship and making sure that we're able to make more events like this on campus available for students. So our first question for the panel today is, could you share about your personal history with Hawaiian language and how ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi is a part of your life with a specific example or experience?
First time I actually ever heard Hawaiian was going to church at Wai'ehu at the Mahina church with my tutu. Growing up, I was never heard it, didn't even know what it was. Like, I knew I was Hawaiian, but didn't know nothing. You know, I'd hear my tutu guys sing, and everything was in Hawaiian at the church, you know, from singing, you know, to the scriptures, all the Bible, we're all translating in Hawaiian and everything. And then, next thing you know, my parents decided to put me in Kaiapuni, and I started off at Princess Mahina ʻŌlelo in Lahaina. So I went there from kindergarten to 2nd grade, and we didn't have kumus out there, so I didn't want to leave Kaiapuni, so I ended up transferring from Lahaina all the way to Paia. And then I ended up meeting the class that I ended up actually graduating in this past year. And yeah, it was an amazing experience to go through the Kaiapuni program. And even if, you know, for people that wasn't able to go through it, and is like, you know, like you guys just learning now, I tell you, don't give up. You know, if it's something that you really want, do it. I'm still learning, you know, just because I graduated Kaiapuni doesn't mean that I'm still learning now. You know, that's why I'm here.
I'm Kahele Dukelow, so I teach here at Maui College, and my background in Hawaiian language is sort of not similar, actually. I only remember hearing Hawaiian in church, and only when certain kupuna would pray. That's the only time, because my church was in English. And I never really thought a lot about it. I actually went to Baldwin High School up the road, and then I came down to UH. Back then it was MCC, but and I took a Hawaiian language class. And I took 2 years of language here, and I eventually transferred to Manoa and finished up taking Hawaiian language and ended up majoring in Hawaiian studies with an emphasis in Hawaiian language. And I ended up teaching in the Hawaiian language immersion program, Kaiapuni. I ended up having some children with somebody else who speaks Hawaiian, and we raised our children in Hawaiian. And it's become really a life, but I was never planning to do that. It just sort of, you know, I just sort of fell into a Hawaiian language class one day and, you know, took it from there.
So what Kīʻope shared was that he said ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi is the foundation of his self-identity. And as you know, Kīʻope is a
major player on our campus, and he's somebody that we can all clearly recognize. This is me talking now, not him. I thought I should know that. Yeah, basically his answer was, ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi is the foundation of my self-identity.
Mahalo. Next question, is there an ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi that has stuck with you through the years? If so, what does it mean to you?
Ike aku, ike mai, kokua aku, kokua mai. To be noticed, to notice someone, to be noticed, to help someone, to be helped. For me, I moved around a lot around the island, and meeting new people every day, wasn't even family like weather, but I always treated people like they were family, whether I knew them or not, because if it ever came down to it and I needed help, I was hoping that anybody could help me, because if I fall, I want somebody to pick me up, so if I see anybody else fall, I want to pick them up, so, yeah. Going on.
So, ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi are important in our culture because they sort of remind us of foundational principles, and there's a whole fat book called ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi, and they're like proverbs, and really there are proverbs for almost anything. But over probably 30 years of speaking Hawaiian, you recognize, or you have your favorites that you use to sort of remind you of things. So one of them is He ika aina he kaua ke kanaka. And literally it means the land is a chief and the people are its servants. And this is sort of it's a foundational concept for Hawaiians. And it shows us, in almost any kind of situation, what perspective or how we should perceive things, whether it's an issue, whether it's a decision you're making, whether you're trying to figure out where you build your house, or all kinds of, you can use these ideals, these concepts, these foundations in all kinds of different contexts. So for me, I use them when I'm trying to figure out, something like Haleakala, right? How do I feel about them building on Haleakala? Right? And these are things, so you would go, for me, I use these ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi to sort of inform what I think a Hawaiian principle would be, right? So you use these to, as lenses almost for different things. So that's one, He ika aina he kaua ke kanaka. And again, it gets to the sort of foundational principle of how humans are viewed, how we should interact with the land. And what our responsibilities are to our aina that we live on. Another one is ulu kalala ike kumu, which means the branch sort of grows from the tree trunk. Conceptually it means that, like whatever you do, right, you affect people, whether they're your children or your students or your friends or your family. And really it reminds us to act accordingly, to make sure that what you're doing, you want other people to sort of do too, right? So it reminds you of those things. And those are just a few. One more. Ika ʻŌlelo no keola, ika ʻŌlelo no kamake, which is appropriate for this particular discussion, which means in language there is life and in language there is death. And you could probably write a book on what that might mean to us in this modern day, but one of the ideas is that when you say something, it has life, right? So once you let it out, it's going to do something and you're not really sure, it can do good and it can do bad, right? So you should really, and it reminds us, okay, maybe we should really think about what we're going to say, because again, it affects people. In the case of what we're celebrating this month, which is Hawaiian Language Month, right? And you have to really think about, like, why do we need a Hawaiian Language Month in Hawaii? So the idea that 35 years ago there were less than 1,200 speakers of Hawaiian, And because of, you know, the quick action of some people who began to think like, okay, if there's 1,200 people left right now and they're all old, they were all kupuna, right? In 10 years, in 20 years, they're all going to be gone. And then we're not going to have anybody. So that's why schools like Kuulei were started to sort of revive that. And today we have, I would say, upwards of between 10 and 15,000 people, so it's work. So the idea that, you know, in language there is life and in language there is death, for not just Hawaiians, but for people who live in Hawaii, it is also a way to bring life to our people from a, you know, particularly Hawaiian perspective.
So Kīʻope shared that his ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi is Nawai ko'i ko'ole o ke akamai, ke ala nui I ma'a I kahele ia e o'u mau mākua. And this is from Iolani Iwaliho, Kamehameha II. And he also wrote that he felt that Kamehameha II was a person who understood that much of what we value as appropriate knowledge to have as individuals, as a people, as a nation, starts with the wisdom of our ancestors. So that was something that was important to him.
How can we use ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi to strengthen our lāhui on Maui?
My opinion, I don't think it's just the ʻŌlelo though that we can use to strengthen our lāhui. It's the manaʻo, the ʻike, you know. It's all around, just a Hawaiian perspective in general. You know, the basic knowledge of a Hawaiian person. I honestly put it this way, like growing up, you know, I was always taught, you know, face it back against the water, because if not, the ocean would take you in, or you take care of the aina, you know, throw rubbish on the ground, because if not, the aina not will take care of you. You know, and there's a lot of people in our generation that don't know basic things like that. You know, you get brothers on the beach throwing bottles, you know, and it's like, it's all right, because it's not their fault. It's not their fault that they weren't taught to take care of the land, and it's not their fault that they weren't taught to take care of each other, you know. And they don't realize that if we don't do the things to be able to take care of the land and take care of our island, then how are we supposed to then take care of ourselves?
I do a lot of, I teach here, so part of my job is to encourage people to learn Hawaiian, to speak Hawaiian, and not just to speak another language. That's one aspect of it, right? That, you know, you're bilingual or trilingual, but also so that we can revitalize the language, so that's another thing. And I think in the revitalization of that language, we are also able to revitalize other aspects of our people. So, you know, as we revitalize language, revitalize ʻŌlelo noʻeau, we revitalize our history, revitalize our own mo'olelo, we revitalize our cultural values, the way we interact with each other, the way we raise our families, the way we interact with our land. We revitalize our connection to them, right? So that, like some of you are in my mythology class, and when we talk about Hawaiian mo'olelo, about, you know, about Maui, right? And he was born in by Makamakaʻole, and he had all of these exploits around the west side of Maui, and, you know, he turns his enemy into Black Rock, or pu'ukeka'a, you know. So when we how many of us have been to Black Rock? I mean, I've just jumped off Black Rock, right? If you live on Maui, you know, you're always doing something. Or pu'ukeka'a, right? And when we think of it as Black Rock, that's it, right? We think of it as Black Rock, and this is where, you know, young people and some older people go and jump off. But when we know this story of Maui and the particular, it wasn't really a battle, it was sort of, he was going after somebody who doubted him, right? And chased him all over there, and he gets there and he turns him into that rock. it's a very different way of perceiving that rock, right? It's not just a black rock. It has this history and it has this mana, right? So when we think about, when we perpetuate our stories, we perpetuate that kind of relationship to our places, which makes us hopefully interact with those places a little differently. So when I think specifically about ʻŌlelo, so I mentioned before, I have 3 children, we have 3 children, and because we both spoke Hawaiian, and when my first child was born, we lived on Oahu. He taught at, at Manoa in Hawaiian language, and I taught in a Hawaiian language school. All our friends spoke Hawaiian, right? So my first child only spoke Hawaiian. And then we moved back to Maui and we had 2 more children, and we were still able to maintain Hawaiian language at home for our kids, right? So that was their first language. But they learned English everywhere else, right? Grandparents, cousins, or whatever. But for my specific family, so I'm one of 8 children. So I'm the second of 8. So when we moved back, we put our child into the punana leo, and then eventually into paia, in Kulakayapuni, into immersion. And then what happened was all my other siblings did too. So in our family, we have 23. I have 8 siblings, and we have 23 kids below that. Mo'opuna of grandchildren of my parents, and they all went into Hawaiian language immersion. And you don't realize until you have a time to look back at it. And but what was happening was really a whole generation, right, of Hawaiian language speakers. So I came to college. I came here, and I went to Manoa, and I learned. My parents did not know Hawaiian. My grandparents did not know Hawaiian. My great-grandparents knew Hawaiian but didn't speak Hawaiian. So you're talking about 3 generations of not having any Hawaiian, me going to college and learning Hawaiian, and then the next generation of my whole entire family speaking Hawaiian. And when you think about how that grows or affects our lahui, we're hoping, the jury's still out, they're still young. They're between 28 and, the youngest is probably like 10. What we're hoping is that it establishes a different way of viewing the world, right? And not just Hawaiian stuff, right? And Hawaiian, of course, we all live in the same world, but having those kinds of values and knowledge bases and different perspectives to be able to sort of build a better Maui for us to live in. They all live here, right? So instead of wild development and things that challenge us today, right? The degradation of our environment, our inability to grow our own food and all those kinds of things. I really think that language is a way, and not just language, but language is a part of that, is a way of growing a generation of children or of citizens that found their values in something more than just capitalism and money, right? Because I think we know that if we continue down that road, Maui's, we're already in trouble. The way it is now, we're already in trouble. I think we have to do something different, and I think that learning Hawaiian in concert with a lot of other things can help us to build that next generation.
Sharing Kīʻope's answer. What he said is using ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi at all times, in all places, and with all people is in and of itself an active agency and a conscious effort to exist as a culture. Deep. Our final scheduled question for today. What advice would you give to students just starting to learn Hawaiian? And are there any resources that you recommend outside what is offered in the classroom?
First of all, don't be ashamed to ask a question. Whether you think it's a dumb question or not, it's not dumb. It isn't. Trust me, been there, done that. Ask questions. I love being asked questions, even if I might not know the answer, but trust me, I'll find you the answer somewhere or another. Just remember that you're learning a new language, you know, well, no matter whatever language, but it takes time, you know, even for me, it's still taking me time, you know, it's a process, but don't give up and don't put yourself down just because it's, you know, maybe taking you longer than others, or, you know, you're having a harder time with certain things than others. Like, don't let it bring you down, just keep pushing it, because deep down, if it's what you truly want, you'll get it eventually. You know, you just gotta be patient. Yeah, it might take years, but you'll get it, you know. And if you guys ever need help, you know, the whole Kahua lab is always up to help you guys.
What advice? I mean, I think a lot of people, you know, are like, oh yeah, you know, you were speaking Hawaiian your whole life. I don't know if I can ever do that. And I'm like, no, I started right here in Hawaiian 101 and Hawaiian 102 and then Hawaiian 201, and I don't even think I was the greatest student at that time.
I heard stories.
Hey.
Different panel.
But learning language, I mean, so there's a lot of levels to look at learning a language. So learning a new language is beneficial for your brain no matter who you are. Learning language is a normal thing that humans do. And we all learn languages for different reasons, right? So maybe you're Hawaiian, maybe you're not. But we all live in Hawaii. So you might have a, you know, maybe you dance hula. Maybe you just want to speak Hawaiian because you want to explore the concepts that are sort of embedded in that. Maybe you're Hawaiian and you feel like, and you know, I get this every year, so, and I don't know if people realize this, but, you know, when you come from a history of language loss, and you know, that's a whole other panel, and the way that language was suppressed in Hawaii, and the way it was outlawed, and the way it was degraded over generations, sometimes you're left with people, and I have people in my class who, you know, like, oh, come on, such a bad Hawaiian because I don't know my language. And you know, I'm always like, hey, wait a minute. The fact that we don't know our language today was intentional. It was planned that way, right? We're all supposed to come out of, you know, our American educational system speaking English. It wasn't built for us to speak Hawaiian or perpetuate our language. So, you know, but a lot of Hawaiians today sort of carry that kaumaha, or that guilt, that shame, that I'm not good enough sort of thing because I'm a Hawaiian and I don't know anything about being Hawaiian. I don't know my language, and so I always, you know, tell them that well, that was intentional, right? You know, the plan was put into action and it worked, right? We were 1,200 people close to extinguishing Hawaiian in Hawaii as a language, right? We were so close, and again, I mentioned before, without the work of people like Kīʻope, Pila Wilson, and Larry Kimura, and a group of people who really sat down and said, hey, we're going to do something about this, and we're going to shift it. And they came up with a pretty grand scheme, right, to put Hawaiian language as an immersion program in our public schools. You know, it wouldn't have been that way. You know, we probably would have been lost. So so you know, again, whatever reason brings you to Hawaiian, I think it opens up different portals for you to be able to see whether it's art or history or politics or agriculture. You know, it opens up this portal to all of these different ways of knowing that I don't think we can get. But I also don't think that, you know, just because you speak Hawaiian, you're a good Hawaiian. I still care about, well, what are you saying in Hawaiian and how you're using Hawaiian. You know, but I also think that Hawaiian has a place in Hawaii for everybody. You know, it can be and it should be, you know, normalized in our communities. Resources. So, you know, I know people can learn Hawaiian in college because I did, right? and I became a fluent speaker. I teach in Hawaiian, I can read and write in Hawaiian. I mean, so I know it's possible, right? We know that children can be educated in Hawaiian from, kindergarten. I've taught 2nd grade, where we have students who came in and have no Hawaiian background, and in a year, they're speaking Hawaiian just like the rest of the class. We already know this. We know that you can be schooled in Hawaiian from kindergarten to 12th grade and go on to college and become, do anything you want to do. We already know this, it's established. But for me, one of the best ways to really learn Hawaiian is to create a community around yourself. So whether it's your classmates or anybody, people you dance hula, anybody, right? And just get together and focus on that. However you can, so whether it's, at the MAC or at the bar or at the beach or at the whatever, whatever it is, or at a protest or at, whatever it is, just trying to figure out, to surround yourself with people that, have like ideas about that and challenge yourself in that way. I always tell my students, it's like, okay, you're probably not going to become a fluent speaker of Hawaiian just by coming to class 1 hour every day, right? You have to figure out other ways to surround yourself with language, whether it's watching stuff on TV or listening to stuff. You have to you got to take that leap. You got to immerse yourself in some sort of way. So what kinds of resources? There's lots of stuff on TV. There's a whole channel in Hawaiian. There's tons of stuff on the internet, tons of stuff on YouTube. There's no lack of things to watch and listen in Hawaiian. Read. There's tons of stuff.
Is there anyone that you favor? And with that thought in mind, like for some of us that have doing life and doing other things, which one can we?
So I think OEV TV. If you go to OEV TV, they have a Hawaiian language strand, if you will, and they have a bunch of different videos. One particular one is Nahulu Kupuna, and this was done back in the 80s, where they actually went around and did some, short interviews with kupuna who could speak Hawaiian at that time. So I think those are pretty. I still enjoy watching them just because we don't get to see or hear native speakers of Hawaiian anymore. They're pretty much all gone. I mean, there's a few around, but very, very few. So yeah, I think that one is a good one.
So for Kīʻope, he was also talking about online resources. And this is just me now speaking from my librarian hat. There is a bunch of stuff out there, like Kahele was sharing. There's Lukau, there's Papakilo. There's also stuff like the Internet Archive. So if you're looking for more things that are like historical stuff and you want to learn more about maybe first-hand accounts for certain things, and a lot of it is from Western point of views, but it just adds to your knowledge. And also a little promo for our library. We also have a Hawaiian collection as well, and like Kuulei and Kahele were also sharing too. If you do want to start bringing this into your ohana and sharing with your keiki, we do have things that are written for children as well. So it's in ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi, it's also in English. I think it's such a great way to start building language into your own household. And from my personal experience from working in public library spaces with children and from other parents, that's one of the things that I've noticed that families do when they want their children to learn something. I've had people ask for I want stuff in French, I want stuff in Spanish, I want stuff in Chinese. I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, yeah, and it exists, it is out there. It's just a matter of asking and putting a hand out and saying, can you help me? And that's what we, exist as an institution for. As librarians here at the library, we can help you do that, beyond the classroom. So if you do want to expand your research, we are here to do it for you. And we're always very open to, getting more resources, trying to find things and different stuff like that out there. So I think that's one of the things that we're really trying to push here at the library.
So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't be afraid to check it out, even if it's a kid's book. We don't judge. I don't judge. I think it's an excellent thing.
I think reading children's books, depending on your level, is a great thing.
Oh, yeah. They really help, trust me. I still read them. Like, I have a box of children's books that I read once in a while just to make sure my sentence structures are correct. Because, if I try to have a conversation with Kahele and I say something wrong, it's like she looks at me and it's like, I knew I said it wrong. So it's like, I gotta make sure that I up all my stuff. So
Context, she was my student.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I would also say that, this is particularly about Hawaiian language, in Hawaii. Of course, I have a special affinity for that. But, when we talk about children learning language, children can learn language. It's a natural thing for them. They don't get confused between each language. In fact, we just came back from a conference in America centered on language acquisition and immersion. And that is one of the things that, famous researchers, we got to meet this guy, Fred Jennison, you have any idea who you are, but for people like us, we read his work when, I was learning to become a teacher. And so he was at the conference, and so we have, people who have been researching language learning for 40 years. And, they just plainly say, okay, children don't get confused learning multiple languages. They can learn 3 languages at the same time and be absolutely fine. Adults might be confused. But children, the research on the brain shows that they know exactly, every language has a perfect place in the brain, and they don't get them crossed, and they're not confused. So it was, if you're thinking, of course, I would love for them to speak going, but any language that you have in your household, if you still have your grandma who speaks anything else, I would encourage you to share that with your kids. Or with yourself, if you still have somebody in your household who speaks another language, learn. Because you don't want to be in a situation where 2 generations down the road you're like, I wish I spoke the language of my grandparents, and I could have, but I didn't.
Now I'd like to open up to you guys. If you have any questions to ask our panelists, I'm pretty sure they'll be more than happy to answer. Yes?
Lālā, you can go.
Go ahead.
Well, mine was with that conference. Was there anything else interesting that you found for Hawaiian language that was interesting there that you heard?
Lots of interesting things.
The top 2 maybe.
The top 2. So like I mentioned, I got to talk to Fred Jennison, and he actually came to Hawaii in the 80s and worked with that group of people who I was talking about, who created the model for Hawaiian language immersion in our public schools. So, I got to ask him questions like, why this or why that? And one of the questions I asked was, in Hawaiian language immersion, you do not learn English in the classroom until you're in the 5th grade. And that's way later than, say, Spanish or French immersion, which is usually 2nd, 3rd grade. So, I asked him. I mean, I kind of had my own, being in the field for a long time, I had my own, but I wanted to ask, him, that's the way they set it up. And he basically said, which is what I thought, but, the idea that in Hawaii, there's no other place besides the school that they're going to hear Hawaiian language. And they felt at that time that if they let English in too early, that because of the English dominant society that exists in Hawaii, that it would hurt the development of their 2nd language, which was Hawaiian. Which is, what I thought, but, to be able to ask him about that was awesome. I mean, it was a great conference, so many good things. I had 4 yesterday.
So we were speaking, or you folks, I want to thank you folks for sharing your manaʻo with us today. And earlier, just listening, we were talking about, or you folks were talking about like brothers like me littering and this and that, but like, can you speak to like, and how kupuna lost their or kupuna had their language but were disempowered from speaking it? Can you speak to, and as we know, America, the military is the biggest polluter in Hawaii, so can you talk about the American influence on ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi and the continued illegalization and criminalization of the language in today, and what it means for ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi in the future?
Sure. I don't know how many of you know, if you're in 107 or any other class, you know that the Hawaiian Kingdom was overthrown in 1893. Now, our battle with English, or this issue between English and Hawaiian, starts way before that. In 1846, right, Hawaii establishes a public education system and mandates that children between the ages of 4 and 15 go to school. And at that point in time, the schools are all in Hawaiian, and they're community schools all over our islands. Now, because of the influence of economic factors and different people coming into Hawaii, different people coming in to live in Hawaii, English becomes, people are advocating for more English-speaking schools for their children. And so it's as early as like 1851, we also have English schools in Hawaii. Now, fast forward a little bit to 1893, there's the overthrow. 1896, there's actually a law banning Hawaiian language from any sort of government capacity, which is school, right? Any public schools cannot speak Hawaiian, cannot be run in Hawaiian. Things like the Department of Health and the judiciary and all of the things that were established during the time of the kingdom were sort of flipped into English at that point in time by this rule, really because of the loss of political control of Hawaiians, right? So when we talk about, so how many of us went to public school in Hawaii? Okay, so probably the most you had in Hawaiian is like our kupuna that comes in and you learn maybe colors and numbers, and that's sort of a new thing. But really what happens is that the public school system becomes this sort of vehicle for Americanization. So not just through language, but we all know that languages convey culture and convey values and convey all kinds of things. So really, so when I talked about my parents and my grandparents, they all went to public schools that were designed post-1893, post-overthrow, during the territorial period all the way up until now, that were designed to do a few things. One is to make sure that everybody speaks English, right? So not just Hawaiians, because we all know that other kinds of, whether you're Filipino or Japanese, right? If you've been here for generations, also your grandparents were in that educational system that was designed to squash out basically any other language, and only to impart not just the English language, but also American history, American ideals, American culture, and those kinds of things. And education has been used all over the world, not just by America, but by other people, as this sort of vehicle for assimilation into whatever colonial power that comes into a place. So in Hawaii, absolutely for sure that our public education system was designed, right, to promote American assimilation.
Yeah, and what do you think that the continued illegalization today means for ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi?
Well, I think one of the things that and we know from Kaliko's case last year, that a lot of people were sort of feeling confident or secure in the fact that no, Hawaiian is one of the official languages of Hawaii, right? It's an official language. We have the right to speak it. That's secured to us. That right is secured to us. There's nothing that's going to stop us. And what we saw, and this is just, you know, an example, there are other examples and I'll give you some. What we saw in court last year in January was when he asserted his right to speak Hawaiian, right? The prosecutor's office was like, well, you know what, I know you speak English, so I'm not gonna let you. No, I'm gonna mandate that you speak English. And when he showed up in court that day, and again, this is Maui. He's been in front of that judge at least 6 times. The bailiff is his classmate. The court reporter is his auntie. There's 40 people in the room. We all know who he is. And when the judge calls out his name and he answers in Hawaiian, he refused to acknowledge that. And he basically said, okay, sends the bailiff out, who's his classmate. Go look if Kuulei Raneta is outside. If you've ever been in a court, that's what they do. You know, if they call your name and you're not in the courtroom, they send somebody outside to look for you. And so she goes out and we can hear her. Kuulei Raneta, he's there. We're like, what is going on? You know, we're all sort of just shocked. And then she comes back in and says he's not there. And I felt really bad for her at that point because I know, you know, this is, Jesus, the things that, you know, we're made to do, and I know, you know, in the systems that are created to do this to us. And you know, when he actually called and said, okay, he's not here, we're gonna issue a warrant. What is it? A contempt of bench warrant for his arrest because he didn't show up to court. You know, we're all just sitting there like, what the hell? But that was, you know, for me, I don't think it was good, but you know, it was a great example of really, is our right protected? It's really not protected. It's still up to a prosecutor or a judge to, you know, confirm that right. And they have the power to say, no, I'm not going to confirm that right. I know you're right in front of me. I know you're answering me. I know you're saying you're here, but I refuse to acknowledge that. And I'm going to actually, you know, issue a warrant for your arrest, which is ridiculous, right? And so I think there are so many ways that we're continuing to be challenged. So at the conference, there are other Hawaiians there, some people who worked in the Department of Education, a lot of principals, or maybe like 4 principals that came because their communities are asking for immersion schools. And you know, one of the things that, you know, we try to talk to them about is that if you study the history of education in Hawaii, it's very clear why it was developed and organized the way it is. And I don't think that most people, even people who are directing the work of the Department of Education today, I don't think that they acknowledge or know that, you know, they just think it's normal. No, this education that we provide in public schools is normal. We learn about American history and, you know, this, and we learn about this, and we learn about that. And I don't think that they realize the role that they continue to play in the assimilation of our children. And so, you know, like, I think it's okay to learn about all kinds of other people. But the point is that we don't learn about ourselves, and we continue, right, to suppress our own history and our own languages and those other things. And not just about Hawaiians, but we're in Hawaii. That is super important. But also the history of other people in Hawaii. So I think that, you know, I don't think that it's sort of, oh yeah, we're all good, it's an official language, and you know, it's alive. There are still so many ways that people who I think are just sort of ignorant or evil, I don't know, sometimes I think both, continue to do things that that aims to stop and suppress the things we do. So I was watching the on Akaku last week, the prosecutor was being interviewed. Well, he was being they were confirming. So he was being questioned by the county council, and he kept lying. Like, I'm like, I know that's not the truth. You know, that he kept saying, well, no, you know, it wasn't us that didn't want to allow Hawaiian. It was the judge, and I'm like, we were all in the courtroom. They read your statement. It was definitely you. But then he would still say things like, yeah, but we all know he speaks Hawaiian. I mean, we all know he speaks English, and he just wanted to make a political statement. And I thought, So even if that was the case, so you know what I mean, we still don't, right? It's still not our choice. It's still not our right to make that choice, and you're gonna make that choice for us. And I think I don't think he's even conscious.
So Kahele, on that point, Friday we can make an even louder voice heard by showing up at that county building.
Oh yeah, what time
when
is
they
that?
all vote, 9 o'clock in the morning.
Friday.
Friday. Everybody should go, because most of us don't have class. Go in there and you can testify. Go read about this guy. He's a disease. You ought to go in there, watch what's her name? Keani Rawlings just laid him out, like literally
She did a great job.
laid him out. So you can go watch that if you want and use pieces of that, but go in there on Friday and make sure that these 4 people do not get that position.
And you know, another thing is sort of I know some of us feel like, oh, my auntie works there, my mother works. I mean, I think we feel for the people who are in these positions. But I think there are some people who play a pivotal role in ensuring that the system continues to oppress certain people. So in one of the times that we were in court, they send a Hawaiian lawyer, right, to the court to actually make the statement. So it's the guy on top saying, no, don't use Hawaiian. We're not going to allow you to use Hawaiian. We're going to make you, speak English. And they send a Hawaiian lawyer in there. And, we're strategizing for days, trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And at that point in time, the lawyer, the prosecutor is crying because it's obvious that she doesn't feel that they're doing the right thing, yet she's forced into this position by her boss and has to come and really face the people and say, no, we're not going to allow you to speak Hawaiian. And I'm just sitting here going, trying to get Kaliko, and I'm like, don't lay her out, be nice to her. I feel so bad for her right now because she's obviously, but I think that that's so normal. You know what I mean? That happens all the time where people are, forced into these situations, and yes, we should figure out how to stand up against that, but it happens everywhere in the department. I mean, it happens everywhere. On this campus, it happens,
If anyone wants to research genocide, you will find that one of the effective ways to commit genocide is to remove the culture but save the worker. Do you think that has something to do with the fact that we had such a high literacy rate prior to statehood and such a low one post-statehood?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, so something like what's the year? I think it's 1896, our literacy rate among Hawaiians in both Hawaiian and English is, upwards of 89% or 85%. And in 1986, right, almost 100 years later, in 1986, our literacy rate in English was the same, but nobody spoke Hawaiian, right? So when you think about why, people would say, oh, it's because you needed English to compete in the world and da da da. That might be true, but I don't really think that was, we kind of all know that, again, for Hawaiians, not just Hawaiians, Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese in Hawaii, right? The idea that you needed to speak English was not just about, oh, I want you to do better in in this English system. It was really about controlling what you did and how you did that and how you interacted. So absolutely, it's an intentional thing. When you sometimes, and this is anyway, sometimes when you see people going into other areas and you think they're doing, well, I'm bringing water and I'm teaching them English and I'm establishing English schools, and on the surface, that's like, well, that's a great thing. But when we look at history, those sort of great things that seem, like humanitarian, really, when you begin to replace their own language and educational system and food production systems and all those things, in the end, it really is a process of colonization.
We have a few more minutes. Does anybody have a dying question that they have to ask now? Anything that somebody has to share or they'll pass out? Okay. Well, I thank you all for coming today. I really hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you got some amazing manaʻo and knowledge that you can take on for the rest of your life. If you didn't sign in on the sign-in sheet, it's back there. Please sign in. But thank you all so much. I hope you have a great day. Lā mai kaʻi.